April 11th, 1970. Cape Kennedy, Florida. 1:13 in the afternoon. Three men lie flat on their backs, strapped into a metal capsule stacked on top of 3 million pounds of rocket fuel. Below them, a crowd of thousands watches from the causeway, including the astronauts' own families, wives and children squinting up at the sky, hands shading their eyes, hearts in their throats. The countdown reaches 0. The Saturn V ignites. 39 million horsepower tears through the launch tower with sound and fire, shaking the ground for miles, and Apollo 13 claws its way off the pad toward the moon. By now, this almost feels routine. Apollo 11 already made history 9 months earlier, first men on the moon. Apollo 12 followed without a hitch. The public is losing interest. None of the major networks even plan to air the crew's scheduled broadcasts in full. Nothing about this mission will feel routine. Commanding it, Jim Lovell, a veteran astronaut on his 4th spaceflight, the most experienced man in the program, about to become the 5th human being to walk on the moon. His wife, Marilyn, watches from the VIP area, having already lived through 3 launches. But this one, somehow, still isn't easy. Alongside him, Jack Swigert and Fred Haise. Swigert is a late replacement. The original pilot, Ken Mattingly, gets pulled just days before launch after exposure to German measles. Swigert has days, not months, to prepare for the mission of his life. 2 minutes in, one of 5 second-stage engines shuts down early. A brief scare. The other 4 compensate, and the crew reaches orbit and heads for the moon. For 2 days, the mission runs almost perfectly. Lovell, Swigert, and Haise cruise toward the moon, running checks, cracking jokes over the radio, filming a relaxed TV broadcast home. It airs on local stations. Almost nobody watches. Then, April 13th, just after 9 p.m., Mission Control asks the crew to stir the oxygen tanks, routine, to keep the liquid oxygen mixed. Swigert flips the switch without a second thought. He's done it a dozen times in training. What nobody knows, one tank has damaged wiring, an old defect from a dropped equipment shelf months before launch, quietly worsened by a ground test that overheated its internal heater far beyond limit. Nobody caught it. Nobody could have easily caught it. The moment the switch flips, exposed wires spark inside the tank. A sharp bang rocks the spacecraft. Lovell later describes it less like an explosion, more like the whole ship being kicked from underneath. Alarm lights flood the panel. The ship shudders off course. For a split second, none of the 3 men know if they're about to die right there. The blast tears through the service module, blowing off an entire exterior panel and crippling both oxygen tanks at once. Oxygen vents into space, visible through the windows as a thin, glittering cloud. Power starts failing across the ship. Swigert sees the warning lights first, his voice tightening over the radio. "Houston, we've had a problem here. 3 men are now stranded roughly 200,000 miles from Earth, farther from home than any humans in history, inside a crippled spacecraft, losing oxygen, power, and time, with no way to know if they'll survive the next hour, let alone the 4 days home." Within minutes, engineers on the ground realize the horrifying truth. The command module, the only part built to survive re-entry, is dying. Oxygen, power, water, all draining away in real time. Stay inside it, and the crew suffocates or freezes long before Earth. There's only one option left, and it isn't built for this. Attached to the command module is the lunar module, a fragile, spider-legged vessel meant to land 2 men on the moon for a couple of days. Unlimited power, water, and oxygen. Never designed to keep 3 men alive for the 4 days it will now take to get home. It
becomes their lifeboat anyway. Lovell and Haise scramble into the lunar module and power it up before the command module goes dark, while Swigert races to shut the dying capsule down and save its last scraps of power for re-entry, days away. No time for fear, just checklists, muscle memory, and a countdown running backward from everything they trained for. On the ground, Mission Control faces a nightmare nobody trained for either. Every simulation assumed the lunar module would support 2 astronauts for 2 days, landing. Now, it has to support 3 men for 4 days, coming home, stretching every system to the edge of collapse. Flight controllers who haven't slept in over 24 hours start improvising, chain smoking through the night, running numbers by hand no manual ever anticipated. Power gets rationed to almost nothing. Cabin temperatures drop toward freezing as heaters shut off to save electricity. Condensation beads on every panel. The crew stops sleeping properly, shivering in thin flight suits, breath visible in the cold, barely drinking water to conserve what's left. Then a second crisis creeps in, quieter and just as deadly. Carbon dioxide builds up inside the lunar module faster than its filters can handle, poisoning the air, slowly, silently. The lunar module's canisters are round. The spares, from the dying command module, are square. 2 shapes, 2 contractors, neither ever imagining this exact scenario. Back on Earth, engineers get one job: build a working adapter from only what the astronauts have on board. Plastic bags, cardboard torn from a manual cover, duct tape, and talk 3 exhausted, freezing men through building it themselves in 0 gravity, hundreds of thousands of miles away. It works. The improvised device, nicknamed the mailbox, clears the air just in time. Meanwhile, Lovell faces an even more delicate problem: navigation. With the guidance computer shut down to save power, there's no reliable way to check course by instrument. Instead, he manually aligns the spacecraft, using nothing but the Earth itself, framed in a hatch window, a technique barely rehearsed for a moment exactly like this. One tiny miscalculation, and the spacecraft either skips off the atmosphere into deep space forever, or comes in too steep and burns up completely. He gets it right. As the ship loops around the far side of the moon, farther from Earth than any humans in history, the crew gets one brief, silent look at the lunar surface Lovell was supposed to walk on. He came all this way. He isn't landing after all. No time to grieve it. Every hour still brings new problems. The critical course correction has to be executed entirely by hand. Lovell and Haise holding the spacecraft's altitude steady by eye, timing the engine burn with a wristwatch, because the normal guidance systems are offline, and there's no room for error. Back on Earth, an anxious, historic audience is watching now. Millions glued to broadcasts they'd ignored days earlier. Marilyn Lovell waits at home. Reporters camped on her lawn, trying to hold herself together in front of her kids. Finally, re-entry day. The crew powers the long-dormant command module back on, using another improvised procedure, written from scratch by engineers on the ground, tested in real time, radioed up switch by switch. They jettison the service module first, and for the first time, see the damage with their own eyes. An entire panel gone. Wiring and insulation torn and scorched, hanging into space. Lovell radios down, stunned, describing an entire side of the spacecraft simply gone. Mission Control goes silent, staring at a machine that, by any normal expectation, should not have gotten them this far. Next, they release the lunar module, their lifeboat for 4 desperate days, watching it drift away, about to burn up behind them. Lovell watches it go with something close to grief. It saved their lives, and now it's gone. Then, re-entry itself. Radio blackout from the heat of atmospheric friction normally lasts around 3 minutes. This time, 90 agonizing extra seconds of total silence. while mission control and the world hold their breath. Then, a crackle of static. A parachute confirmed. A splashdown, right on target, in the Pacific. Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise come home alive. Mission control erupts. Grown men in white shirts and thin ties, some crying openly, hugging after 4 days without sleep. What was supposed to be the third moon landing becomes something else entirely, arguably NASA's finest hour. Not a triumph of getting somewhere, but of dragging 3 men back from somewhere they were never supposed to survive. The disaster leads to sweeping changes in spacecraft design, redesigned oxygen tanks, an extra emergency battery, backup systems built for exactly this failure, making every mission after measurably safer. So what actually caused Apollo 13? Not one failure, a chain of them. A dropped equipment shelf months before launch. A ground test that quietly overheated a tank past its limit. A warning nobody was in a position to catch until it was too late. And when the moment came, it was met by an extraordinary combination. 3 astronauts calm enough to hold a dying spacecraft together with their bare hands, and an army of engineers on the ground improvising life-saving fixes out of duct tape, cardboard, and sheer stubbornness. Live, with 3 lives on the line. Jim Lovell never got to walk on the moon. Sometimes the greatest mission isn't the one you finish, it's the one you survive.